Hey, I'm Jay Beershank. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're here for one that's been a long time coming, but one that's got to come now. Because who knows what the future holds, but in the past this has definitely been a big thing and a big learning and a big story that I've had in my life. And what is that? Traveling the world nonstop with no money. How do people do that? Everybody asks me, how do you travel around? There was a long time I never made money. I didn't see more than $5,000 until I was maybe 24, 25. I'd never had more than $4.5 grand in my bank account, ever. And I felt like a rich man with $4.5 grand, okay? But I lived everywhere. I was in Europe, I was in fucking all over the world, and people were always wondering, how are you doing that? How are you doing that? And I'll tell you the one key, okay? One key, you're trading your time instead of trading your money, okay? That's what it really came down to for me, okay? So I started traveling when I was 19 alone. I went to some trips with the church when I was a teenager in high school, but by myself, I left at 18, 19 and started doing trips, okay? I had money saved up a little bit. I think I left my first trip. I went to Japan. I had $3,000 and I stayed in Japan for 3 months. I blew all my money then. I didn't know really that much about saving. But anyway, you might be surprised, 3 months, $3,000 in Japan. I had a good time, but guess what? I utilized work exchange. I was woofing. I'd never used woof except for in Japan. I started using Workaway, but they're both great. Woofing is worldwide opportunity for organic farming, and what this falls under is a genre of things called work exchange, okay? Work exchange is a really great method to travel. And when I was starting it, when I was doing it, I told myself I wasn't doing it because it saved money. I told myself I was doing it because it allowed me to immerse myself in the local culture, meet people who were from the place, live with locals, and really get a full-on local lifestyle, which I really valued. I really wanted that because I wasn't traveling to, just see the places and just be there. I was traveling there to understand the people and the lifestyle and see what is it like to be here. What does being here create inside of you? How does one who is from here see the world? That's what felt super important to me. So I started doing work exchange in Japan. But I didn't do a good job of budgeting that time. I blew all my money. And then the next trip, I came back after 3 months and I went to Mexico. I was living with my grandpa for a month. We were doing a little trip together. And then I met some guys at a hostel and I decided I was going to go. So I went and traveled with $1,000 with them. They were Europeans and they had money and it was difficult. I borrowed a lot of money from the Europeans and stuff. But long story short, I learned what not to do during those first 2 trips because I blew all my money. And then I went back home and I worked for a summer as a wedding coordinator. That's what I did until I was 20. I was a wedding coordinator in the summers. So I worked for a summer. I made like 3-4 grand. And then I left to Thailand the next year. And then this is where I really learned how to really travel nonstop with minimal amount of money, okay? And what I leveraged the whole time was work exchange, okay? So work exchange allows you to live and eat with locals or local businesses, okay? So one of the first ones I did was in Cambodia. It was on Kota Kiev. I'll put a link to this. I have a lot of vlogs of this whole experience, so if you want to go see what that was like, you can see. But I lived on a beautiful tropical island off the southern coast of Cambodia for 2.5 months, and I didn't spend a single dollar in that 2.5 months, and I lived great. I ate what I wanted. I did tons of drugs. I had a lot of fun, and that was through Workaway, okay? So what I learned in Cambodia was that Workaway is not only with local people, it's also with local businesses. So this was I think a British-owned company, and it was all foreigners that were working there because they were all also working through this exchange. So anyway, what that showed me was that you can have really any experience that you want with Workaway, and that was really game-changing for me because it wasn't just about, because my experiences in Japan were really kind of shitty, living with local people and really getting taken advantage of in terms of the work I was doing. I remember one of the women who I worked for in Japan, she had an English school, and she would make me and the other foreigners put on shirts that said like "Welcome to my English school," and we had to stand outside of the grocery store for like 8 hours a day. And like Japanese people would, it was in the middle of nowhere, Japan. Japanese people were going into the store, obviously we'd just be there, hello, hello, and then we had to do that for 8 hours a day. So that was like obviously just like a taken advantage of free advertising situation where she like kept 8 or 9 of us in like the attic of her house, and she like fed us rice. It was a good experience, but it was like, okay, this is probably not ideal and not what this platform's for, and it's not something I would recommend for someone to do, because obviously you don't get to have that great of an experience unless you want to see what that's like, but it's like long term it's kind of shitty. But anyway, on Kota Kiev, I had the best experience of my life. I would say that this was the most fun, the most free I'd ever felt up to that point, and it was probably it was definitely the most fun thing I've ever done in my life. Like, I would go back in 1 second, but I was also, 20, 21. I was just in my underwear for 2 months straight, and it was a party island, and there were so many beautiful girls, and it was just like, it was, you can imagine, it was great. But didn't spend a cent. I fell in love there, and then I went off with this German girl, and I spent all my money. I had like $1,000. I spent all my money, and then I ended up teaching in Thailand. So there's always opportunities to make money too, if you're not afraid. Basically, like many people, if they were in my position. So it was COVID. It was happening. It was just about to take over the world. Hadn't yet. But anyway, I'd fallen in love. I spent all my money. She was gone. She left. And I was in Bangkok alone with no money. I found a place in Bangkok where you could teach English for like a couple hours a day. Not even teach, you just had to have conversations with people for a couple hours a day. And you could stay there for free. So I did that for about a month while I was looking for jobs. I was talking to everybody I could about how do you make money here in Thailand as a foreigner. I found out about modeling. I did some modeling, made the most money I'd ever made in my life anywhere in the world. In an hour or two modeling, I made like $350 in like an hour, doing some like Greek god type modeling where I like stood naked and like had like this strange little pose thing. But anyway, it paid. And then I did another one. I got into kind of like a modeling contract with a smaller modeling company, and so that was like bi-monthly, made about $1,000 US bi-monthly, which was a lot for Thailand and a lot for me, especially considering that I only had to work like 8 hours, 4 hours on one day of the weekend and 4 hours on like Saturday, Sunday. And then I also got a teaching job. So anyway, what I'm trying to point at is I was able to then build up my cash flow again. I worked for, I think, nearly a year, like 10 months, saved up money. I lived like a king during that 10 months again. I was 22, 21. I was a high school teacher. I was just doing whatever I wanted, okay? I was flying around Thailand, seeing every girl I could possibly see, doing everything I could possibly do, drinking Lao Khao till the fucking cows came home. I was having a good time. It was a good time. That was also one of the best times of my life. So, point that I'm getting at is that you can trade your time in different ways. You can trade your time as a volunteer, or you can trade your time working, jobs if you're willing to do that. But, you have to trade your time if you want to travel full time. That's just what you got to do if you want to do it with no money, because you got to make it work. Anyway, so after I had that money, then I went to Albania. You can see all this on the blog, so it's all documented. Went to Albania. I did a bike trip for a couple months. Albania is awesome. It's super cheap. I barely spent any money. Then I went and worked in Italy. I worked as like a construction worker in Italy because the guy I was on the bike trip with knew some Dutch people that owned this Italian resort place. That's also documented. That was the most beautiful place I've ever stayed, and some most awesome experience I ever had. Honestly, that was so cool. And but again, I was exchanging my time. I worked there for 3 months, but I was getting paid there. I was getting paid, I don't know, like 150 euros a week, so 600 euros a month, not spending any money again, so I saved some more money. Then I went to Tanzania. I was doing some stuff in Tanzania. I lived in Tanzania for a long time, man. Like maybe like 3 months I lived in Tanzania. I was a teacher there. I did it for free, but I was just kind of like, I don't know, I was just enjoying living in the slums. I was living in the slums of Arusha, drinking my chai mazuri and just drinking, Chai Mazuri and reading, what was I reading? Anna Karenina, and I was reading Anna Karenina at the Chai Mazuri shop and teaching kids. I loved it. I had a good time, but I was just kind of wasting away there, just kind of chilling, I guess. I don't know. It was during COVID. I didn't really want to, I don't know. I was just like hanging out here. But that was awesome. I went to Kenya for a little bit. I went to Kenya for like, I don't know, 2 weeks. I started working as a construction foreman for this German lady's Airbnb company. She had like a big Airbnb company on her property, and she employed a bunch of Kenyans and wanted me to run the site, which was absolutely ridiculous because these Kenyans were way more qualified grown-ass men who had way more construction experience than this 22, 23-year-old guy that just came in and was supposed to manage them. But that was definitely eye-opening. But anyway, I did that for a couple weeks, and then I got a call from my family. Went back and I worked at GeoShip, which is a family company. Worked there for a while, and basically that was most of the time when I traveled with no money. So that's from 19 to 24. So I traveled around the world with basically no money for 5 years, okay? Pretty much straight. Then that was the first time after I worked at GeoShip for a while. You can go check out GeoShip. GeoShip's an awesome company. They build bioceramic geodesic domes. They're building a really big one right now. I think it's a 36-foot in diameter geodesic ceramic dome. It's in Nevada City, California. Great company. Yeah, so then I left there. It was a startup. They ran out of money. They couldn't pay me anymore. I needed to make money. I wanted to go live in Europe, so I was going to go buy property in Portugal. This is back when they had the Golden Visa program in Portugal, where you could buy the habitable structures with property, and then you could become a Portuguese citizen. And now the law's changed where it has to be a minimum, I think, of 200,000 euros or 250,000 euros. But back then, back in what was that, 2022 or something, I think the law changed to 2024 or something. But anyway, you could just go there and buy like a 10,000 euro shack, piece of crap house, and you could become a citizen. And then through becoming a citizen, you could slowly, have the rights to live in Europe and get a passport and stuff. And that's what I really wanted at that time. I really wanted to live in Europe. So I went and did commercial fishing. That was my first time commercial fishing. I didn't make a ton of money that first time, but I made some really good friends, and I got my foot in the door of the business, and I was able to go back next year and get a rockin' ass job because I had that prior experience. But anyway, I did commercial fishing. Then I went to Portugal with the idea of buying land. I was delusional because I had literally $4,000, and I was like, I'm gonna go buy a piece of property in Portugal. Obviously I wasn't, but I did the Camino from the southern portion from Faro to, what's the first city? It's I don't know, maybe that's Lisbon, or I don't know, the first big southern city. I forgot what it's called. It's not that far. I think I did like 150 miles or something, maybe 200 miles. But that's when I had met my ex-girlfriend, and that's when my whole kind of life changed big time in terms of traveling with no money and what I was doing, because she was Swiss. She had a lot of money. I needed to start making money. I needed to figure my shit out. So I did. That was the plan. And then going forward now, I would say that the biggest I kind of gave you a little life story there, but anyway, the biggest tips I'm gonna just say right now for traveling long term with no money is, like I said, utilizing the exchange of time. So if you exchange your time, you can live anywhere in the world because somebody will find something useful for you to do. Definitely. Second thing is living below your means. You might think like, oh, I'm in Asia, or oh, I'm in Africa, I'm already living so below my means, it's so cheap here. Things add up, like if you want to spend money, you can spend money anywhere. There's money to be spent, right? So you could go to Tanzania and you could, stay in the most expensive places, and it's like, oh, it's still only $100 a night. It's so cheap and it's so nice. But it's still $100 a night compared to if you want to go stay, somewhere local and you're going to pay like, $2 to $5. It's like, obviously you're going to save a lot of money if you're doing that. So living below your means and living like locals is really important. Obviously, if you want to, sometimes you can go splurge, you can go to the expensive places. But if you're not someone that has a lot of money, then you shouldn't act like you're someone that has a lot of money just because you're in a country where your money goes further. You still need to act and treat your finances like, how they actually are. So being a realist with yourself and not trying to like overextend yourself, which I have. Like when I lived in Thailand as a teacher, when I lived in Cambodia, I was overextending myself. I was acting like a big shot with my fucking $3,000 because I wanted to be like, oh, I can take you out, I can do this, I can do that. And I would do that And the girls that I was with loved it and they thought it was great and they thought I was rich, but I knew I wasn't, right? Like, if I ended up spending 150 bucks in a night in Thailand, which is a lot of money, then I would feel it the next day. I'd be like, oh shit, okay, that's like, a tenth of my monthly income I just spent last night. So, even though it's only 150 bucks because I was making Thai baht wages. So, anyway, live below your means. Be willing to exchange or trade your time. And then I would put something in there about your time and like how you value it, because it's like you might spend 3 to 6 months doing some kind of an exchange program and you're just living there and you're thinking like, oh, what is this, is it worth it? But a different way to think about your time is like, I feel like so many people that travel, they want to smack so many things into such a short amount of time. Like they want to do everything, all the tourist things, they want to hit everything so quickly. And then like this idea, like many people ask me, oh, how many countries have you been to? That's everybody's first question. How many countries have you been to? It's like, I don't know, I haven't been to that many countries. I've probably been to like 20 countries, 25 countries in 10 years of traveling. It's like, it's not about jamming everything into the smallest amount of time that you can, I don't think, or seeing as much as you possibly can in the shortest amount of time. I think, you really have to be able to value the experience of living in a place and like kind of slowly acclimatizing to the flow of things and like getting into the rhythm, because that's where you learn, I think, and that's where your nervous system changes. That's where your brain gets rearranged, your mind gets open to new possibilities, new perspectives, new modes of being, essentially. So I think you got to rearrange in your mind how you view what you're doing, and you need to decide if this is something for you, because it's not about just seeing as much as you can and doing as much as you can, fucking tweaking out about that. I think that's really a strange approach to traveling, but obviously it makes a lot of sense because people have lives and they can't just throw it all to the wind and they say, okay, I'm going to Mexico, I want to see everything, so then they can go home and say like, oh, that was so cool, I saw everything. And it's cool to see stuff, but like, I think going sightseeing and doing what I'm talking about are completely different things. Like, I'll be honest, a lot of times I didn't go to a lot of the sightseeing things in the countries or areas where I was. I just genuinely didn't really care about them. And I also saw them as like, just like places where people make a lot of money. Of course, certain times I did that and I regret it. Like, I wish I would have gone to Angkor Wat, for example. I didn't go because I was like, oh, it's 20 bucks. I don't have 20 bucks. I was broke, but, anyway, so there's a give and the take, and there's always a balance with that. But those are the 3 things I'd say. So, understanding and maybe rearranging and recalibrating your relationship to time and what it means to be doing the traveling that you find yourself doing, living below your means no matter how cheap the country is you happen to find yourself in, living like a local. And 3, understanding that what you're going to have to do to travel as long as you could imagine you'd ever want to, if you don't have a lot of money, is you're just going to have to trade your time instead of money. Okay? There you go. Those are my tips. I went off the rails and I just talked a lot about my experiences and stuff, but that's all right. You can find all the videos of, most of those travels that I talked about on my YouTube channel. I've vlogged it all. So if you're interested, you can check it out. But I'm going to tell you guys right now that it's absolutely worth it if you're someone that feels like maybe that's something that you want to do, because, I mean, that's also a silly concept. Like, what does it mean for it to be worth it? But what I'm trying to get across is just like doing something unique like that and having an experience like that is going to be so individualized to you that it's going to help you so much to cultivate your own individuality and to cultivate your own way of seeing things. And I think this in and of itself makes you such an interesting person to other people, and it gives you so much value in any room that you find yourself in, because you're going to have independent thought. And independent thought is really goddamn rare. I don't mean to be cliche, but it's like you can find a lot of people that are consuming the same content, thinking the same things, viewing, everything in just such a similar way. It's sort of like the archetype of the exploratory hero. Like, you're going out and you're bringing new information. So anytime that you can come at any problem or situation with a unique perspective, you can add a lot of value, which I think is really great. This can also definitely lead to you being feared, misunderstood, and ostracized, but that's going to be your cross to bear if this is your choice. I can definitely say that I've experienced that. But anyway, thanks for watching. I know it got off track, but I enjoyed filming this, so I hope that you get some joy out of watching it. Thank you guys for being here. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Take it easy. Peace.